This happened sometime, I guess you could say, when I was about maybe 9 or 10 years old. And I think that this kind of still messed me up a little bit in my mind. Now, this took place sometime when I was at a day camp. Let's just call it a swimming camp. It was located at a community center, which I'm not going to name, but it was a community center that was not far from a park. In the community center, we go swimming for swimming lessons in the morning, and then we do free swim in the afternoon, right after lunch. But before lunchtime ended, we usually at least have a couple minutes to play at the park a little bit. Now, it was one of the days when we went to the park to eat lunch. And after I finished my lunch, I went to the swings first, as there was usually a long line up to the swings. But however, I was lucky because I finished first. And as soon as me and a few other kids were finished with our lunches, the counselor said we can go ahead and play. As I went to the swings and I was swinging up and down, I noticed that there was someone I never met before. Now, this person looked to be maybe, I guess, in his 30s, and I thought that maybe he was just passing through, or possibly has a kid or a dog with him, and probably just passed by the park. But I didn't see any dog or anyone with him, so I was confused as to why he was here. I was just swinging up and down, not even paying attention, when he walked over to what seemed to be me. He started staring at me for whatever reason. He was about a couple feet away from the swings, so that way I wouldn't hurt him, but he seemed to be quite friendly. He asked me where his friend's house was. I told him that since I was a kid, I did not even know who he's talking about, and I apologized, but thanked for helping him anyway. Of course, he said, "Oh, I guess that's okay then." Then he suddenly walked away. I honestly have no idea as to what caused him to, approach me. The other camp counselor, which was one of my leaders, walked over to me and asked if I was okay. Of course, I said that I was fine, and he said that the stranger came and asked me something, and he was quite worried that he might have tried doing something to me. But what I didn't know from one of the counselors was the fact that he had a knife at the back of his hand. Of course, it was in his pocket though. And I did remember that he had one hand behind his back, probably something he didn't want to see. Ever since that day, we haven't seen that man since, and our camp counselors were aware of it, and they did their best to keep an eye out for the man. But he's never returned since, and I don't know what he would have done if no one had approached me about the situation or asked me if I was okay. If anyone was there with me, then there was a chance he would have wanted to grab me when I was not looking. I still get chills to this day whenever I think about this story. When I was about, I guess you could say, around 16 years old, something really freaky could have happened to me, but thank God it didn't. I was at day camp at the time of this story, and this was during the youth in action camps. Youth in action camps were like day camps for teenagers that go from I guess you could say 13 or 14 all the way up to, I guess, 21 at most. I used to go to day camp at the time of this story, and this happened to me when I was about 16. I was going to a pool, which of course we took a bus there, as when we were going somewhere outside of town, we would drive our cars there, which of course the camp counselors did. And if we were going to go somewhere in town that there's public bus transportation to take us there, we'd usually take the bus. Now, at the time of this story, I took the bus with one of my camp counselors and the other camp kids, and when we got to the pool, we had to have our own lockers. Some people had to share their lockers due to other reasons, but we went swimming there anyway as we felt like it. As I was going to my locker, I all of a sudden saw that there was someone or something waiting for at least people near the showers to go before you go to the pool. I honestly didn't really pay attention much to him, so I continued anyway. But however, as I was in my swimsuit, and was following one of my camp counselors, the man stopped me and said, "Hey, you're really pretty." This obviously weirded me out, knowing that this dude seemed to look like a creep. I asked him politely that I need to go, but he said he would let me go if I do something for him. I asked him what it is, and he told me to follow him somewhere. I honestly really was uncomfortable at this point, but I didn't know what to do. Oh, I didn't want to upset him or anything, so I followed him what seemed to be outside the change rooms. Now, he followed me into one of the change rooms, and when I was about to go in there, he stepped inside first. He said, "Hey, sweetie, it's okay. Hey, no one's gonna know." This obviously made me weirded out because this guy looked like he was in his 50s, and I had no idea who he was or why was he there in the first place. But I told him that I was not comfortable with this idea and that I would leave. He frowned as I left. Surprisingly, he didn't come to try to stop me or anything, as I was expecting him to. But when I got to the pool, or what seems to be the showers to the pool, I told my camp counselor about what happened. And the camp counselor told me to stay in the pool area and not to go anywhere unless if it's absolutely necessary. Now, as of this, I didn't even bother doing anything at this point. I didn't even know what to do. I honestly just felt that maybe this person was probably just trying to make me do something illegal. I wouldn't even say what it is, but this guy seemed to be very weird. I tried to ignore him as best I could, but for some reason I saw him at the bench. This obviously confused me as to why he went to the bench instead of getting in his bathing suit. Maybe I assumed he didn't have one, but he was watching, and I got weirded out by the fact that he was watching. I did my best to ignore him, but it wasn't until when I exited out that this guy started following me. I asked him politely to stop, and he frowned but didn't say anything. It seemed like he somewhat acknowledged it, but he continued to follow me constantly. Now, I told the camp counselor about what happened, and they couldn't find him, so we didn't know what to do at that time. As I was going more and more into doing what I normally do, this guy all of a sudden started following us out to the bus. He followed us into the bus until we got back, and that's when we realized that something had to be done. And at this point, the camp counselors called the cops while the others had hauled us up what seemed to be in a safe room where no one was there. We waited out there what seemed to be like at least a couple hours. Not even a couple hours, a couple minutes. That did felt like it was going to be a few hours. Fortunately enough, the police came and talked to us and asked me some questions on who the guy was, but I didn't even know who or what to do, who that guy was or why what he wanted, but I did explain my story as best I could. Now, the guy was gone by the time the police were called, but as of this, they couldn't find him as they tried to look everywhere. Even I explained the best of my abilities of what he looked like to him. Now, at this point, I honestly don't know what to believe in anymore. I would like to think that maybe, just maybe, there was something wrong, but I don't really know if this guy was going to try to hurt me, try to kidnap me, or God knows what. But I never saw him again, and I'm hoping it just stays that way. This happened to me, I guess, maybe to a friend of mine, which we'll call him Damien for the sake of this story. Damien was maybe, I guess, 11 or something, and at the time of this story, he was going to a day camp. It was a sport-related day camp, which included them being in the gym most of the day, which he really liked the gym. He's been at the gym multiple times, and he really do enjoy all the fun and everything that was going on at the day camp. However, something really freaky happened to him when he was around 11. Now, he was at day camp at the time of the story, and he was with a few of people that he knew. I think at least one or two people that he remembered were from school, but the other kids were from other schools, and even kids that he didn't even know. Some of them were even people he's never met before. This obviously had made him really weirded out. He obviously didn't know what they were or what it was, but for some reason, he's been feeling very strange thoughts. Damien one day was at day camp as normal, and everything seemed to be going really well. But then he all of a sudden had the urge to use the bathroom, so he asked the camp counselor if he could go to the bathroom, which of course he did. Once he was in the bathroom, he swore that he could hear a girl laughing. But this obviously confused him as to why this girl laughter was heard. He obviously looked around but couldn't find the source of anyone at this point, and at this point this really freaked him out. He called out if anyone was in there, but the bathrooms were dead silent. He couldn't really hear or see anybody, so this obviously really freaked him out even more. He didn't even know what to speak of it or at all. He ended up going over for back to the gym after he's finished his business and continued. But however, something more freaky then became more happening, and he obviously had no idea as to what the hell was going on. But every time he went to the bathroom, this exact same girl, however, appeared to be near him. He felt that if somebody was watching him, but he couldn't really find out if anyone was really there. Now this one really freaked him out, as he had no idea why he's been feeling this way. Some of the camp counselors noticed it and asked him if he was okay, which he of course said that he was fine. But in reality, he really wasn't fine. Now, the last time he went there was around Friday, and then when he was in the bathroom, he thought he could see a girl. Her head was down and there was hair covering her face, which looked like the girl from The Ring. Now, it obviously made him paranoid about who it was, so he obviously turned around. But when he turned around though, he heard what seemed to be a laughter coming from the girl. Obviously he was freaked out. He obviously didn't know who that was, but he ran out of the bedroom screaming. He was screaming as if someone was there, and the camp counselors asked him if he was okay, but of course Damien took one of the counselors to show him what he meant in that bathroom. But as he looked in the bathroom with the counselor couldn't see that girl anymore. But what this Damien might have countered that day was completely paranormal, and this has never happened to him ever again since then. But he still wonders if this was still in the bathroom as of this day. He is not really sure, and this story really freaks him out whenever he thinks about it. When I was about 7 years old, I went to this camp that was a day camp, but it lasted all week, which meant I arrived there on Sunday and then leave on Saturday. So the camp was basically all week. The camp I used to go to was Circle Square Ranch. Unfortunately, at the town city where I used to go to that place at, they shut down at least sometime, I guess, in 2008 or 2009. I'm not really exactly sure, but that's not important. Now, this story happened to me and my friend Nicole, which I met when I was 7 years old. This place was taken sometime around 2007, and it was the summertime. Sunday, I arrived there and I unpacked and got settled in, meet up with some other camp people, and etc. Now, we were going to do some fun ranch activities, which includes working with horses and etc. Of course, they have some archerying and some canoeing and etc., which I really do enjoy. This girl, Nicole, I met, she's 9 years old, so she was at least 2 years older than me, but she was one of the sweetest girls you could ever meet. However, as the days went on while being at camp, it wasn't until I guess Tuesday when, at nighttime, Nicole and I were just chilling on our bunk beds. We were in a cabin with a couple other girls. There was at least 2 or 3 cabins on the top of one of the hills that was not far. It was in the woods, so mosquitoes were pretty much swarming all over us when we go up there. Now, this was around the time when YouTube was only maybe 2 years old, and Nicole had brought a video camera in case if she wanted to see something neat. At nighttime, though, we couldn't sleep really much for some reason. It was probably around maybe 1 in the morning, I'm not really too sure. But Nicole suggested we go outside and maybe take a video camera to film something cool. I had to go to the bathroom at the time, so me and Nicole decided to go down to the washrooms together, which was located at the bottom of the hill where the girls' cabins were. We walked down that hill. As we were walking down that hill, though, we ended up having to use our flashlight, as even though there were some lampposts that go up the hill for people to see, they weren't really the best ones, but they were still provided just a bit of light. When we got down to the washrooms and did our business, Nicole and I decided we would go do a little bit of exploring before we go back to our cabin. I know we shouldn't do this, fearing that we would get into trouble, but Nicole insisted we do so. We ended up going over and exploring around the place, but however at the campgrounds. All of a sudden I was looking over and I thought I could hear something walking in the woods. Nicole thought that maybe it might have been some wildlife, as some raccoons and skunks and squirrels like to come around. Occasionally, once they had a bear in the area, but that was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. As we were exploring, I took the video camera to think that maybe I could find something, but to no avail, and unfortunately the video camera's batteries were dying, so we had to shut off the camera. Luckily we had our flashlights, and as we were exploring, Nicole suddenly felt stiff as a board, looking at something. I looked, but I couldn't see what it was or what she was looking at. All of a sudden, we heard a really loud scream that came from somewhere in the woods. We did not even know what the hell that thing was, or whatever that scream was. It came from something. It didn't look like a human voice or even sound like a human. We ended up running it down the road and going back up the hill back to our cabins. When we got back there, we immediately shut the door to our cabin and immediately went back to our bunk beds. Luckily, none of the campers or counselors woke up and heard us. We were doing our best to be quiet as much as we could in order to prevent them from being woken up. I couldn't sleep that night, knowing whatever that sound was. And Nicole and I eventually fell asleep, but we were still paranoid of what that sound was. It wasn't until breakfast time when Nicole and I were explaining to each other about what we saw or whatever we heard. She said that noise, it sounded like a demonic scream. Now, we didn't really know if that was actually from a creature or something, but we had no idea what that was. And as we know, I still don't know what or who made that noise, but I still don't want to find out to this day.